This is a DH Audio production.
The ultimate bull. Let me begin by saying that I don't hold with lying. It is a disgusting habit with no other purpose than the deceit of one's fellow man and woman. After a lifetime spent in the company of elk hunters, I am pleased to report that they, as a group, abhor lying as much as I do. Oh, sure, elk hunters are only human, and occasionally an innocent little fib will escape their lips while they're relaxing around the campfire of an evening. A hunter might, for example, describe his packing of an elk quarter up a mildly steep hill in terms more appropriate to carrying a refrigerator up the north face of the Matterhorn. But that is an exaggeration to be forgiven. What cannot be forgiven is the outright lie, such as changing a 5-point rack into an 8-point rack. That sort of unconscionable falsehood offends the honor of all elk hunters, who know that it is permissible to add only 2 points at most to a rack, and then only to a hunter's first elk. His future elk are not permitted to grow any points at all after they have been shot, unless, of course, the hunter has reached the age of 65, and then anything goes. I know an elk hunter who, upon turning 65, gave up the sport. Scarcely a month later, he had bagged at least a dozen more elk than I'd been aware of, which was 3, and I was both pleased and astonished to hear of his recent good fortune. "Ed," I said to him, "I never realized you were such a successful elk hunter." "Yes, I am," he replied simply. "Here, all the years we've known each other, you have only mentioned 3 elk. Now, suddenly, there are 18. 23. 23 now. I would have thought an even 24, perhaps." "I prefer the odd number. Besides, I'm too old to hunt down another elk." "Really?" I said. "Why, I would judge that the last 20 elk were about the easiest ever taken in the entire history of hunting." "Well, they were a heck of a lot easier than the first 3, I can tell you that." By age 70, Ed was kicking himself for not having at least 10 of his elk officially scored, because they would easily have made Boone and Crockett with several possible world records. Ed was a man of restraint, however, and once his lifetime score reached 23 elk, he held pat on that number and refused to exceed it, even though that would have been easy enough for a hunter of all the skills he'd acquired since giving up the hunt. Ed did not believe in excess. One day, as he was approaching 90 years, I asked him if he had bagged any of those elk with a bow. "Not at the present time," he said. So right there you can see how modest he was. He could just as easily have shot half those elk with a bow, but he wouldn't do it. As I say, all true and honorable elk hunters under age 65 and a few over abhor the lie and will never use it to deceive their fellow elk hunters. What means are left, then, with which to deceive fellow elk hunters? Disinformation. Yes, disinformation. This is a wonderful rhetorical device developed by the folks in Washington, D.C., to avoid telling either lies or the truth. Here's an example of how disinformation can be put to good use by elk hunters. Let us say you got your elk last year by grace of your cow permit. You are now playing cards with some other elk hunters, and one of the guys asks you if you got your elk last year. You feel no pressing need to mention that your elk was a cow. "Yup," you say. "Whose deal is it?" "Harry's. Good rack?" "Nothing I'd hang on the wall. I thought Harry just dealt. Must be George's deal, no?" "Well, let's see. I dealt 2 hands ago, and oops, sorry. Didn't mean to spill my hot coffee in your lap, Charlie. Now, this is how disinformation allows one to keep from telling a lie without telling the truth, augmented by a bit of diversion. Now, let's say that I am seated at a table at a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation banquet, and I, in all my years of dedicated elk hunting, have never shot an elk. Naturally, I want to appear as adept at hunting elk as my banquet companions. Otherwise, what am I doing here at an elk hunter's banquet? I certainly don't want to be found out as an imposter. So what can I do? When all of the successful elk hunters of the previous year are asked to stand, I alone at our table remain seated. But I do not merely sit there. I also smile bemusedly. You can get a lot of mileage out of a bemused smile. No luck last year, huh? One of the successful hunters asks me. Oh, I looked over some pretty good racks, I reply, but nothing I wanted to pull the trigger on. The reason I didn't want to pull the trigger on the racks is that they were hanging on a friend's wall, and he would have been mad as the dickens. Thus, no lie is involved in this response, as you can see. My response is merely a bit of disinformation. Nevertheless, I've left the impression that I have reached the discriminating stage of elk hunting where only the ultimate bull will do. Impressed by this response, my dinner companions lean forward attentively, hoping to pick up a few tips from a master elk hunter. I must then launch into something like the following soliloquy in my best authoritative tones. The thing to remember about your really big bull is that he's almost never going to be where you want him to be. So you have to hunt him where you don't want him to be. And that's the steepest, nastiest hole in the mountains that you can find. You spend half a day climbing down into that hole, and there's your elk. Or maybe not. If he's not there, and you want to remember this, then he's someplace else. Most of the time, in fact, he's someplace else. Or maybe he's where you wanted him to be in the first place, but you are someplace else, namely where you didn't want the elk to be, and he isn't. That's pretty much the essence of elk hunting as I see it. Gosh, sir, how many elk have you got in your lifetime? A young fellow asks. Not really all that many, son. Fewer than a dozen. Like a dozen fewer. But keep in mind that I'm not going to take just any old bull elk that comes my way. Like if a bull elk ever comes my way on roller skates, I'm not going to shoot him. Unless, of course, I think he stole the skates, which he probably did, because how else would a bull elk get roller skates? So I'd have to shoot him anyway. What's the longest shot you've ever made? I guess about 600 yards. Missed, of course. Wow! What's your best rack, sir? My best rack? Let me think. Yes, my best rack. Now, whose deal is it anyway? Deal? We're not playing cards. Oh, good heavens, so we're not. I thought it was a terribly slow game. I must be at the wrong table, if you gentlemen will excuse me. Now, here's a tough one. Suppose a friend asks you the location of your secret elk hunting place. Your initial impulse is to lie. What secret elk hunting place? I don't have a secret elk hunting place. But that would violate the elk hunter's code. On the other hand, you know if you tell him, your friend will invite all his cronies along with him, and they will chase all your elk into the next state. You could tell him to just buzz off and find his own secret elk hunting place. But that would break the bonds of friendship, which would be all right, too, if the guy didn't hold the mortgage on your house, on which you're behind 3 payments. So, you must tell him. My secret elk hunting place, you say. Henry, you are the only person in the world I'd reveal this to, even if you didn't hold the mortgage on my house. And you must promise never to tell another soul. Here's how you can get there. You drive up to the end of Jefferson Creek Road and then climb to the top of Jefferson Peak. There's no trail, but just keep going up until you reach the peak. You can't miss it. Now pay attention to this, Henry. Take a long rope. You'll need the rope to get down the sheer cliff on the other side of the peak. The rope will also come in handy for hauling your elk back up the cliff. Once you're in the valley below, you'll see another mountain off to your right. Climb that one. Take a left at the top. Good gosh, Henry says, interrupting. Isn't there a road anywhere near this secret elk hunting place of yours? Whose deal is it? I just dealt, didn't I? So it must be yours, Henry. Oops, sorry. Spilled my coffee right in your lap.